Welcome to the Week 5 Waiver Wire Show. Today we'll be discussing the top waiver wire pickups at each position, including bid recommendations and deeper league targets. Be sure to stay tuned until the end, where we answer questions we got on Twitter from you, the listener.
A little more low-key waiver wire week this week, Adam, but we'll hit on some names that should be relevant for all of you guys out in your home leagues and deep leagues.
Yeah, I personally, in my leagues, blew almost all my FAAB on Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams. And, I didn't know for sure that it was going to work out like it has. But to me, like from a philosophical standpoint, taking huge swings, 50, 70% of your FAAB on guys like that, I think is better because we get to weeks like this where, my God, what am I going to do? Like spend $7 on Chuba Hubbard? Like, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think from a philosophical standpoint, feel good about that when we get to weeks like this. Let's start with, Let's start with running backs here. I think, to me, you can make a case for Chuba Hubbard or Jaleel McLaughlin to be the best running back off the wire this week. Chuba Hubbard actually played ahead of Miles Sanders for much of that game against the Vikings. Meanwhile, Jaleel McLaughlin got work before Javonte Williams got hurt, and then Javonte Williams hurt his hip. Now, the report from Adam Schefter is that Javonte Williams' hip injury is not that severe. So what do you think about the running backs that are available this week, namely Chuba and McLaughlin? Because I do think Spears, most people listening to this probably already have Spears, or Spears is owned in their league.
Yeah, I think it's very close between Chuba and McLaughlin. I have them in the same tier, and I encourage people to make their own personal decisions there. From my perspective, I give the slight edge to Hubbard just because it is a two-man backfield there in Carolina. I think if something were to happen to Miles Sanders, Hubbard has easier paths to a majority role. Whereas McLaughlin, I think McLaughlin is the handcuff running back in Denver to own over Samaje Perine. We can hit more on the usage stuff there. I do like McLaughlin over Perine, but that still would be a 50-50 split if Javonte were to miss time. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I think both Sanders and Javonte at this point are more likely to play than not. It's difficult to know. Sometimes, like, we got this with Odell Beckham, right, where he injured his ankle and all the reports were like, oh, it's not a big deal, he's not going to miss time. Well, he's missed 2 games in a row. I wouldn't be shocked if we get a similar thing with Javonte, where the initial reporting's like, oh, he's going to be fine, but he still misses a couple games. So anyways, Adam, I'm talking myself in a bit of circles here, but I give the slight lead to Chuba, but I view them very similarly as the top 2 running back ads off the wire this week.
I think the difference for me is that, let's say everyone's healthy. Miles Sanders is healthy. Javonte Williams is healthy. And I had to start one of them. I would be starting Chuba over McLaughlin if everyone is healthy. And so that's why I would give the edge to Chuba. And then Sam articulated why, if there was an injury, Chuba's role would likely be better. Do think Jaleel McLaughlin can play, though, man. And the Broncos clearly like him. He earned his way onto the team as an undrafted free agent. And again, was earning work in the first quarter of that game before Javonte Williams got hurt. Tyjae Spears is the other running back we have here in the top 10 off the waiver for this week. We've talked about him a ton. When the Titans win 27-3, Spears isn't going to look great. When they're losing, he's going to look way, way, way better. So yeah, Spears certainly I think should be owned as well. The wide receiver position this week off the wire, obviously if Romeo Doubs I think is available in your league, you should own him. I don't know what's going on ESPN where he's only 34% owned. That is egregious. But we will talk about more interesting guys here, which to me is Rashee Rice and Jameson Williams and Tyler Boyd I would throw into the mix too. I think Rashee Rice's role expansion is real, and playing around 50% of the routes last week is going to be the floor for him going forward. Now, do I think that any Chiefs wide receiver is going to break out this year? Probably not, but there's some chance that Rashee Rice can and will, and the Chiefs are clearly expanding his role. So I like him as the number 1 wide receiver ad. After that, I would probably have it Jameson Williams and Tyler Boyd. Just to touch on the T. Higgins injury. T. Higgins is dealing with a rib injury. These are things that guys think they can play through, but aren't always able to do it, and aren't always able to do it well. We know Tyler Boyd's very good NFL wide receivers. So I know we have other guys in the mix here at wide receiver. Sam, guys like Michael Wilson, Josh Downs. But what do you think about wide receiver ads off of waiver this week?
Yeah, so for me, Rice is my preferred ad. I think you outlined some of the case there. A couple of things I wanted to add. Yes, he is running just 50% of the routes, but that's actually near the top of the Chiefs wide receivers in terms of route rate right now. They're basically giving him, Sky Moore, MVS, all these guys like close to 50% route rate. So it's not like he's at 50% and way behind the starters. Like he is getting, from the Chiefs perspective, like starting wide receiver routes. I think there's a good chance that consolidates over the course of the season. Like MVS is out there running wind sprints. We know Sky Moore has not proven to be a high target earner in his NFL career so far. And Rashee Rice boasts a 32% targets per route run rate so far this season. That's an elite mark for a wide receiver. Again, it's out on a limited role, so we can't fully, assume that would scale to a normal 80, 90% route rate for a starting wide receiver, but it's still very promising for a guy early in his career. And he has yet to really pop on the box score in a big way. So I think this is a great week to add him for cheap. And I think the odds of him getting a full-time role by the end of the season in Kansas City, with his target competition being guys that I just don't think are good NFL players, to be honest. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, MVS, Justin Watson. I think Rice's odds of beating those guys out is quite high. So he would be my favorite waiver ad at wide receiver so far this week. But I'll stop there. Maybe we can have the Jameson Williams debate too, because I think a lot of people will have him as the top ad. So that might be a guy worth diving into more.
Yeah. So I think that it's rare you can add a legit top 10 NFL draft pick talent off waivers and project him eventually into a spot where his team really needs it. And so it's been an awful start to Jameson Williams' career. He came to the NFL with the ACL situation, gets the suspension for gambling. He also had a hamstring injury. He's missed a ton of time. Also, we haven't seen him play in a very, very long time. I know he had a couple routes and snaps last season. They need him, man. Everything is kind of close to the line of scrimmage. Gibbs is near the line of scrimmage. Amon-Ra's near the line of scrimmage. David Montgomery's near the line of scrimmage. Laporte is near the line of scrimmage. Reynolds isn't great at stretching the field. They need Jameson Williams deep down the field. Now, he hasn't been with the team at all in the last 4 weeks. So I think it's going to be a slow ramp up for Jameson. But yeah, he's the kind of player that, like, how bad can it be to add him off waivers? If you start telling me that we're going to have to start spending 50, 60% of our waiver budget on Jameson Williams, that's a different story. But hopefully I've been carrying him for a while now as just kind of hope and pray, and definitely got a boost when the suspension got reduced. So yeah, I assume you have a bear case though on Jameson Williams, considering you have him here down below some other guys.
Yeah. So for me, he's still like a top 10 waiver wire ad for me this week. And I'll be clear. I view on this list here, for people listening, Romeo Doubs is at the top. And if he's available, he's clearly like the tier 1 ad for me this week. Then all these other wide receivers I have listed: Rashee Rice, Josh Downs, Jameson Williams, Michael Wilson, Tyler Boyd. I do view them in a similar tier. So if you want to say Jameson Williams is the best of that group, I won't push back too far. I think that's totally reasonable perspective. My bear case on Williams is just that, man, he's just a guy where we are giving a lot of excuses to. Like, I know he was coming off the ACL tear last year, but he only earned like 37 routes in 6 games last year. We've seen guys come off ACL tears and be full-time players. Like and we also see rookies have much better statistics than 1 catch in 6 games through a rookie season. So I'm still looking at that as a bit of a negative for him last year. And in the preseason, the reports were just not good for him. He was playing deep into preseason week 1. So I'm just anticipating a really slow start for him. I do think, again, his talent profile is awesome. Over 1,500 yards at Alabama his junior season. That's something we should be excited about. First round draft capital. But I just think it's going to be a slow start for him to beat out the likes of Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond. And I know that sounds crazy, but some of the little things that us fantasy analysts don't like to talk about, like blocking at wide receiver and just being at the right place in the right time, I think the veterans like Reynolds and Raymond are just going to be a little bit ahead of Jameson at this point in his career. So yeah, that's my kind of bear case. I still think if you want to spend 10, 15%, 20% even FAAB, I'm not going to say that's a bad move. I understand that, but I'm not going much above that to get him, when I think there's other options like Rashee Rice, Josh Downs, Michael Wilson you can get for very cheap this week. So I'm not prioritizing Williams in a huge way above those guys.
Yeah, I just think you don't find the same ceiling if things break right. And it's certainly a bit of a parlay, but if things break right for Jameson, like there's no way Michael Wilson or Josh Downs or Rashee Rice can find the same ceiling that Jameson Williams can. So I think it's worth a swing for sure. The Tyler Boyd, I would be fine starting Tyler Boyd anytime T. Higgins is out. Like, just close my eyes and just start him, and it's probably fine. Yeah. Quarterbacks on waivers this week. I think everybody's talking about CJ Stroud. Quarterback ads in single quarterback leagues to me are not all that interesting. If you're going to play CJ Stroud or Matthew Stafford or Josh Dobbs, I'd probably just prefer to stream matchups, right? Like, I don't need to spend a bunch of money on CJ Stroud and pretend I'm going to start him every week, where in a one quarterback league, typically the wire is good enough where I can stream in some quarterbacks. Would you be spending any FAAB on CJ Stroud?
Yeah, I think I'm maybe a little bit more bullish on Stroud than you. I recommending around 5 to 15% of my FAAB, but that's contingent on me being on me having a team where I have one of these really struggling quarterback ones like Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson. If I have one of those guys and Stroud is on the waiver wire, I think I am being relatively aggressive for him. Through 4 games in his NFL career, Stroud is second to only Cam Newton in terms of most passing yards. So it really has been an historic start to his rookie season, averaging over 300 passing yards per game. We're talking about Nico Collins and Tank Dell as potential league winners in fantasy already. And there's a reason we're talking about those guys, because Stroud from day one is elevating these pass catchers far, surpassing their preseason expectations. So I'm pretty excited about Stroud. Again, I wrote this offseason about how rookie quarterbacks, that's our chance to find stars on the waiver wire, finding the Cam Newtons, the Justin Herberts. So I am buying into this Stroud hype, I think, a little bit more than you, Adam. I'm kind of considering him like a low-end quarterback 1 at this point with upside. I understand, pocket passing is volatile and that could look silly, but I just want to bet on a guy who's having an historic start to his rookie season. He looks really awesome out there.
Yeah, I mean, we also have Matthew Stafford on this list. To me, there's not a huge difference between CJ Stroud and Matthew Stafford. Maybe that's a bad take, but that's kind of my point, that if both these guys are on waivers, you can just stream whoever has the better matchup. I think Matthew Stafford's playing awesome and should be getting Cooper Kupp back, allegedly in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So, yeah, I think Stroud and Stafford are both totally fine streamers at the quarterback position. Any other running backs you wanted to highlight here? We know Eli Mitchell was out last week. I still think he's probably worth holding. Kendrick Miller played just 5 snaps within Alvin Kamara's return, which is certainly concerning. Ronnie Rivers looks like the backup to Kyren Williams, who has an absurd workload right now. Any other running backs you want to mention for the people?
No, the rest of these names on this list, Eli Mitchell, Matt Breida, Tank Bigsby, Rico Dowdle, etc. I'm just highlighting guys that I think are pretty clearly their team's running back 2, or at least seem to me to be the best contingent upside bets if the starter were to get injured. So none of these guys I'm like fired up to start this next week. They're just on the list because we know injuries happen. And if CMC goes down, having Elijah Mitchell on your team is going to be awesome. So yeah, that's just sort of a general macro strategy thing for waivers. Make sure you're not letting these like RB2s who are on good offenses go completely under the radar. They are valuable stashes at the end of your bench.
Yeah, guys that are one injury away are always going to have value for sure. Other guys at the wide receiver position to touch on, Giants made a change. They played way less of Paris Campbell and Isaiah Hodgins last night, way more of Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. I thought that was notable. Wan'Dale's ADOT is so low, and it's not exciting, but man, that guy earns targets at a really high rate. I also think Marvin Mims, I still want to keep him on my bench if I can. He still only ran 12 routes in that game against the Bears, same as Brandon Johnson, but you have to think that it happens eventually for Marvin Mims. Any other wide receivers you want to mention?
Yeah, I think the only other one, Wan'Dale I do have on this list. 6 targets, led all Giants wide receivers. I think he is a good stash, but again, we're talking about still a slot-only wide receiver on a Daniel Jones passing attack. Just what ceiling are we really talking about there? I prefer the ceiling of a guy like Mims or even someone like Zay Jones, who could be the starter on the Jaguars. Besides that, I think other names that we've already touched on. No other big wide receiver additions this week.
Yeah, I did want to note that Chase Claypool looks done in Chicago. Yeah. They sent him home. And so we do have Darnell Mooney on the list this week. I think if you think Justin Fields can string together some good passing stuff, it's not crazy to think Darnell Mooney can get going.
His role looked a lot better, obviously, with Claypool out of the picture.
Yeah. We got a question from Beam Me Up Scottish. He said, what streamable tight end options are there? Is Jelani Woods worth an ad? Are Kmet and Higbee considered top 12 options going forward? So we are currently working on the rest of season top 150. That will be out Wednesday for Draft Kit Pro or in-season subscribers. So you'll be able to see then how we feel about Kmet and Higbee. I do think that streaming tight end at this point, I mean, no one scores. So if you just want to stream in someone who you think has a chance for a touchdown, it's probably not that bad. With Donald Parham hurting his wrist in this game on Sunday, we have Gerald Everett as the top tight end ad, which I agree with. Gerald Everett has not been great, but now you remove Mike Williams, you remove Donald Parham. There's certainly a better path there for Gerald Everett. The problem is they're on a bye this week. So you should be able to get Gerald Everett pretty cheaply. Any other tight ends you want to mention for Beam Me Up Scottish about streaming tight ends?
Yeah, I still like Jake Ferguson. He's still available in 75% of ESPN leagues. His like snap counts and role have been weird because, man, the Cowboys have played in so many weird game scripts where they've had huge blowouts at the end. I think his role in terms of snaps and routes is actually better than what sort of the data suggests, and they're looking to him heavily in the red zone. So in a matchup with San Francisco, I know that's a tough defense, but that could be a place where Dallas is forced to throw a good bit. And I like, if you're just kind of betting on touchdowns, I think the Dallas offense with Ferguson is a solid streamer. The other one I'll mention is Luke Musgrave. He is dealing with a concussion. So again, this is someone you can probably get for very cheap, but we have seen a near full-time role with him. There's, he played last Thursday night, so I'm guessing there's a good chance he gets cleared. He'd be another guy that I'm looking at off the waiver wire this week.
All right, let's go to the Deep League page here for our Deep League bros. Anybody you want to highlight here for the extreme Deep Leaguers? For those guys, let me just service the audio listener real quick. We're talking about guys like Amari DiMercato, Durham Smythe, Trevion Williams. Anybody you want to highlight on the Deep League list here, Sam?
Yeah, it's really an ugly list, but we're I'm grinding here for you Deep League players, talking about guys like Amari DiMercato. I'll start with the guys at the top here. Trevion Williams and Ronnie Rivers in your sort of 18 to 20 roster spot leagues. They need to be owned everywhere. They're the running back twos on their teams and are one injury away. And then two kind of surprising running back twos we got in week 4 are Keyshawn Vaughn for the Tampa Bay Bucks and Amari DiMercato for the Arizona Cardinals. It looks like even before Keontae Ingram's injury in Arizona, DiMercato was earning the passing down role there. So I think he's a decent bet to be the running back 2 in Arizona. Keontae Ingram's also dealing with a neck injury. And then Keyshawn Vaughn seems to have passed Sean Tucker, at least in week 4. He played more snaps than him. So again, super deep leagues. We're just trying to add running back 2s who are one injury away. Those are some guys I'd highlight. And then finally, one tight end I do want to call out for your deep, maybe tight end premium leagues. Darnell Washington could be worth a spot start for a couple of weeks. Pat Freiermuth is expected to miss some time. And Washington was an exciting prospect for many folks, kind of an athletic freak, really huge guy that could be a red zone threat. So he might be, if you're desperate, a decent tight end premium streamer.
Agreed. I don't know that Darnell Washington is ready to succeed as a NFL pass catcher, but they certainly are going to get him out there with Freiermuth out, and we'll see how it goes for him. Jonnu Smith is currently outperforming Kyle Pitts as more rumors swell about Kyle Pitts' knee issues, etc. And then the other one that I would mention on this deep league list, Mike Evans hurt his hamstring. They do have a bye, but if he's out, Trey Palmer's already been playing a lot. Target share will certainly go up for Trey Palmer if Mike Evans has to miss time when the Bucs come out of their bye. You can always find explanations, FAAB recommendations, full list here for everything in Sam's article every week. He's spending a ton of time on it. Check it out on the site, his waiver wire for week 5. Get to a few questions before we get out of here. Cushman has a historical question, Sam. He says, are there any historical waiver trends for this time of the season? Better generally focus on rookies, contingent plays, bye week replacements, etc. I would say for me, one thing is that as you get closer and closer to the playoffs, I'm more and more likely to want to be handcuffing my guys. Like bench means less and less in the playoffs, but we're still pretty early here to say that, Sam. This time of year, as we head into week 5, how do you think about generally waiver wire stuff?
Yeah, I think this stretch of the season, your bye week fill-ins actually become a pretty big factor. And again, it's important to look at your roster, look at your schedule and see where you might have gaps. But generally this time of year, maybe the Tyler Boyd types where I know I'm going to probably get a decent fill-in starter for a couple weeks if T. Higgins misses. I'm more likely to hold him at this point of the season because I know I need a spot starter for a couple weeks. Whereas sort of once the bye weeks pass, I'm more likely just to hold, upside on my roster that I know if one thing breaks right, this player is going to break my starting roster, like your Elijah Mitchell types. So again, this question, I don't have necessarily historical trends to point to, but I think really important to look at your roster and look at your starters and sort of align the schedule up with what you're going to need in their bye weeks to fill in your flex and running back and wide receiver positions and kind of make your decisions based on that.
MLB P-Mouse says, I need to pick up a running back to start this week due to the bye. Who is the best out of Akers, McLaughlin, Pirine, Justice Hill, non-PPR league? My God, non-PPR league, MLB and I didn't know that people still played in those. I would also say that, look ahead to your buys. If you knew that you were going to need a running back for this week, hopefully you could have been out in front of something last week to have better options. But Sam, what do you think about plug and plays this week between Akers, McLaughlin, Pirine, Justice Hill? And again, this is non-PPR. We're basically just talking about touchdowns.
Yeah, non-PPR, I think I would go Pirine here just for the chance that Javonte misses. I don't know. We're all guessing at this point.
You mean McLaughlin?
So I was thinking Pirine over McLaughlin in non-PPR, just because we're betting on touchdowns and McLaughlin's 187 pounds, 5'7". Pirine's 230 pounds. McLaughlin actually has gotten some goal line looks, so I'm not confident in that. But if I'm betting on a touchdown, basically, I think it's more likely to be Pirine than McLaughlin. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair. I think if I knew Javonte was going to be out for sure, I would add McLaughlin. So I would keep your ear to the grindstone or whatever the phrase is there on Javonte Williams' health. But yeah, for me, it would be McLaughlin or Pirine. It would be McLaughlin definitely if Javonte is out. The safer one is just Pirine because he's going to have a role regardless.
And again, I'm only saying Pirine over McLaughlin because this question says non-PPR. Yes. If this is even half PPR, I'm going McLaughlin for sure.
Dan says someone in his league dropped Cleo Herbert. Do we trust Cleo Herbert's increased usage and shove some FAAB on him, or do we still think that Roschon kills his upside and play more conservatively? So obviously Cleo Herbert's performance has to be taken in context. He was facing a historically bad Broncos defense. However, at worst, Herbert is the 1B. And at best, he's like clearly ahead of Roschon. And that's what we saw this past week. He was clearly ahead of Roschon when they got a lead. And so I don't think Cleo Herbert should be on waivers. I would probably shovel some FAAB on him. What do you think about this? And this happens a lot, Sam, where it's like people drop guys that I don't really like, but they still shouldn't be on waivers. I never know whether I should like fire in on them because I don't really want them. But they also shouldn't be on waivers. Is it my job? Is it my duty to be the enforcer and be like, hold on, this is insulting to Cleo Herbert. He shouldn't be on waivers. But yeah, anyways, what do you think about people dropping Cleo Herbert and adding him back?
Yeah, I probably would shove in on Herbert again. He is not my favorite player based on how the Bears offense looks through 4 weeks, but you can't ignore what he did in week 4, not just in terms of his box score result, but he completely boxed out Roschon Johnson. He had 56 snaps to Roschon's 16, 26 routes to Roschon's 9, 23 combined targets and carries to Roschon's 6. So, we heard talks of Roschon overtaking Herbert. It looks like the rookie took a step back there in that competition in week 4. And Herbert has been a very efficient runner at the NFL level over his couple years of his NFL career. So, man, yeah, I think I would probably shove in like in a typical home league, like a 50, 40% bid on Herbert. Again, I just think we say how this week's kind of lame on the waiver wire. Like it's not really getting better. Sure, there are going to be some good ads over the next 6-7 weeks, but we're going to have a lot of dud weeks on the waiver wire. That's just how things go once the season gets going, in my opinion. So Herbert's probably one of the best ads you'll have all season, assuming sort of a typical home league setup.
I would say on this, like nobody wants to hear it, but sometimes coaches say hot hand and they're not just blowing smoke. They mean it. And so Cleo Herbert comes out and plays well and he's running the ball well. You're not going to take him off the field because, you want to get Roschon work. Like guys playing well, they were in the game. It just is what it is. So like when he plays well, he's going to play ahead of Roschon. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Jerry says, would you drop Jahan, Dotson, or Elijah Moore for Purdy or Stafford? My quarterback 1 is Daniel Jones, and I'm scared to live like this. So I would just stream between Purdy, Stafford, and Daniel Jones. Whoever has the best matchup every week, I would stream. I do like Purdy and Stafford. I think they're both awesome. Obviously, with Daniel, not awesome. I think they're both serviceable. With Daniel Jones, you get the rushing upside as well. But I think that's like a perfect spot to try to have two of them and stream, or just drop Daniel Jones and ride with Purdy or something like that. I think that's totally, totally fine. I think a more interesting part of this question, Sam, is dropping Jahan Dotson or Elijah Moore. It has been ugly for Jahan Dotson. They have been so flat, have the Commanders, in their target shares. I mean, Logan Thomas is earning targets. Bates is earning targets. Curtis Samuel is. Jahan Dotson is down to 0.67 yards per route run.
Yeah.
I don't want to drop Dotson or Elijah Moore for a quarterback, but I do think it's worth discussing. What do you think about this question from Jerry?
Yeah. So to answer the literal question first, I think in that case, I'm dropping Daniel Jones for your favorite quarterback of Purdy or Stafford. I think this week, based on matchups, I probably prefer Stafford. So answering that part of the question, but then the more general, would you drop Jahan Dotson? Man,
or Elijah Moore.
Yeah, or Elijah Moore. I think I am still holding those guys. It depends who's on your waiver wire. I think, man, again, Romeo Dobbs, I know he's not available in a lot of leagues, but allegedly still 70% of ESPN leagues is available. If Dobbs is available, I'm probably dropping Dotson for Dobbs, even though it doesn't feel great. But generally, I do want to hold these guys. Dotson, it has been really flat. We did see that bounce back a little bit in week 4 as Dotson and McLaughlin saw a bigger piece of the pie than they had before. But man, you can't start Dotson right now. I'll say that. So I do get why people are asking about dropping him.
For sure. Rhino Vesting says, is Josh Kelly worth an ad over Spears or Warren if Eckler is back after the bye? So I do expect Eckler to be back after the bye. They listed him doubtful. There was some like light rumors that he could play. I don't think any of that was real, but now he gets another 2 weeks before he has to play because of the bye. These high ankle sprains can be aggravated. So I'd prefer to have Josh Kelly, but I also like Spears and Warren. Can't keep them all. Sam, what do you think about priority between Josh Kelly, Tajee Spears, Jalen Warren right
now? So I think I would rank it as Spears, then Kelly, then Warren. I just think a little bit more talent upside with Spears. But I still think the situation for Kelly is really good, just being on the Chargers offense. Whereas, man, the Steelers are a dumpster fire. I mean, even though I like Jalen Moore a bit as a talent, I prefer the upside of Kelly there. Even if Eckler's back, I think you keep that contingent upside on your roster.
We had another Josh Kelly question. Brad says, can I drop Josh Kelly to take shots at other handcuffs like Jeff Wilson, Rico Dowdle, Keontae Ingram, Keaton Mitchell, Ronnie Rivers, etc.? So we should note that Jeff Wilson is eligible to come off of IR this week. I have not heard if he actually will yet or not, but with how well Mostert's been playing and Achane's breakout, it's hard to see a big role for Jeff Wilson. To me, Jeff Wilson will be like the backup to Raheem Mostert, and Achane has his own role. But yeah, I don't think that it's crazy to want to add him, but I think I'd rather have Josh Kelly than all these guys. Jeff Wilson, Dowdle, Keontae Ingram, Keaton Mitchell, Ronnie Rivers. What do you think about Kelly versus those guys?
Yeah, I'm holding Kelly there. I think it's important not to just have like shiny new toy syndrome in some ways. Like, I get it. Kelly has not been good in his spot starts, but we have seen for 3 straight weeks, if Eckler's out, he's the guy on the Chargers. We don't really know that about any of these other guys. Like, sure, we think maybe some of them have contingent upside, but that's largely unproven for all of them. So give me what we know in Josh Kelly, even though I know it hasn't worked out super well from a results-based standpoint.
Last question we're going to do today comes from Kenny Powders 100. He says, I need a bye week fill-in at running back. Prioritize Gus Edwards or Jaleel McLaughlin first. So goes back to the same question about Javonte Williams' health. Obviously, if Javonte is out, we would prefer McLaughlin. I do think Gus Edwards is an interesting conversation, though. In games where they get big leads like they had here against the Browns, Gus played well ahead of Justice Hill and Melvin Gordon. And so it's not exciting, but Gus Edwards is a professional NFL runner. They play at the Steelers this week. Gus Edwards has a chance for a touchdown. I mean, he has a chance for a touchdown. And, McLaughlin, if Javonte Williams plays, it's going to be way thinner. So I don't know. It's tough. I would, again, be trying to find out all the Javonte Williams stuff I can first. What do you think about Gus or Jaleel?
Yeah, again, this is something where monitor the injury news throughout the week. If I'm forced to make a decision tonight or right now, I would go Gus Edwards. I just feel better about his odds of a starting role than I do McLaughlin's at this point.
Right. And I mean, Schefter was so quick with the report on Javonte Williams. It was like Sunday night before I even had like digested the slate. Schefter was already tweeting that Javonte probably will be fine going forward. And it's a minor hip thing, you know, and that was on Sunday. So
yeah. I know. I'm just always, I obviously Schefter's the best in the business, but I am always a little bit skeptical of like when a guy's immediately ruled out during a game. Like Javonte wasn't questionable to return. He was like not going to return almost immediately. Plus his offseason multi-ligament ACL tear. I'm a little skeptical he's back this week. But again, you know, Schefter's got the report. I can't say you completely ignore that either. So it's tough.
I think that's a good point because they could just be like, listen, we stink. We don't want to mess you up off your ACL reconstruction. Let's just sit out this week. And maybe what the Schefter's tone of the tweet was like, yeah, maybe he doesn't play this week, but it's not a long-term thing, you know? All things worth considering on McLaughlin. I do think if McLaughlin is able to play, he will be. I mean, if McLaughlin has the Javonte Williams role, he will be successful in it.
Yep.
All right. That is going to do it for your audio and video look at week 4 waivers. Be sure to head to establishtherun.com to get Sam's full thoughts, FAAB recommendations on everyone that is in play ahead of week 5 on the waiver wire. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube or anywhere podcasts are found. Going to be a 4 or 5 podcast week here on the free feed. Not because we make any money off it, but just because we love you in the free feed. 4, Sam. 4, producer Luke. 4, producer Jackson. 4, producer Steven behind the scenes. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.